stream is just starting, so Catherine, I will give you a thumbs up shortly. See, it's a bit of a lag, you see. Right, we are now live. Catherine, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Kate. Good afternoon and welcome to this meeting of the Joint Waste Collection Services Committee. As this is the first meeting of our new municipal year, we do need to elect a chairman. So if I could have any nominations for chairman, that'd be fantastic. Thank you. Councillor Hawkins.
Sorry, I'm not sure what happened. I'd like to nominate Councillor David Mansfield for chairman.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Any other nominations for chairman? No, lovely. In that case, all those in favour of Councillor Mansfield becoming chairman for this municipal year, please raise your hands. Thank you. That's carried. Councillor Mansfield, over to you for second item 2, appointment of vice chairman.
Thank you very much. Do we have anybody who would like to stand as vice chair, please? Any nominations?
Okay.
Right.
Councillor Marshall.
I will be vice chair if that's not opposed by anyone.
Thank you. Looks as though we have Councillor Mary Marshall who wishes to be vice chair. Can I have a show of hands for Councillor Mary Marshall, please?
Lovely. Yeah.
Mary, you are now the vice chairman. Congratulations and thank you for coming forward. Good afternoon, everybody. Before we go on, I'd just like to say certainly a big thank you to the former chairman, Mike Goodman, for all his work chairing the committee over the period that he has. Mike's done a fantastic job and we thank him for that. So I'd like just to minute that, if I may. And I'd also just like, for the purpose of the minutes, to say a really big thank you to Richard Bissett from JWS, who this will be his last meeting because he's going on to pastures new. And we will sadly miss Richard. I had the pleasure of Richard's company on a couple of meetings when I became the portfolio holder. And I thank Richard for all his work and I do wish him all the very best in the future. So with that, let's move on to any apologies of absence, please.
I've received apologies from Adrian Flynn, who is the financial advisor for the group.
Thank you for that. Any declarations of interest? Thank you. No declarations of interest. Members, you have a copy before you of the previous minutes of the meeting to confirm the minutes of the meeting of the Joint Waste Collection Services Committee held on the 26th of February. Does anybody have anything they'd like to raise over those minutes, or can we take those minutes as agreed, please? Nobody's raised their hand, so could I just ask for a show of hands to agree those minutes of the 26th of February 2020? Thank you. Those minutes are now agreed. Moving on to item number 6 on the agenda, Joint Waste Solutions Operational Strategy. You've had the papers before you, members. Can I just hand over to Richard Bissett, who is going to give us an update regards item 6. Richard, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. Congratulations as well. So members will recall an ops strategy framework was outlined in February this year, and this report before you provides a bit more detail in terms of what activities that we, JWS Ops, are going to be focusing on and the associated tasks, and most importantly, the outcomes of those. They're all important for us, but to drive the contract forwards and provide improvements for communities. But what I'll do is I'll just pick out a few key items which have significant impact. So on page 3, appendix 1, section 1 ourselves, I'm going to talk to you about data. So data is absolutely critical to attain the right data to understand what has happened in the past, what is happening now, and what could happen in the future in terms of trend evaluation and intelligence analysis. We're also going to be using data in a different way to improve low performing areas, reduce contamination, and enhance our targeted contract monitoring. There are a number of tasks which have to be undertaken to achieve this, including reviewing our data accuracy and sources, assessing a GIS system, and this will enable us to provide a robust contractual reference point whilst reducing costs, reducing contamination in our recycling, and provide more support to residents where needed and required. Have a look at joint working in section 2, labelled our services. We've already made some real progress on this, and with the government's arrangements between JWS and AMI, and they're already set up, and this is resulting in work and issues being resolved quicker and more effectively. There's still more ground to cover. Crew engagement is critical activity to reduce contamination, obviously increase our recycling rates and decrease costs, and we'll be focusing on this heavily this year. We'll also review our business continuity plans and understand how they've been employed in the current crisis and take learnings from these to make the system even stronger for the future. We'll also focus on climate change and support authorities with data and information sharing, and review the frontline carbon dioxide levels to see if we can assist any further with that. And then finally, on our third section, our community. We've had a really strong programme in place with communication with residents, and operations will support this through local targeted campaigns such as food waste and garden waste to increase tonnage, and wider through the SEP partnership programme. We'll also develop further the fly tipping strategy in conjunction with authorities to reduce this criminal act and the associated costs of clear-ups. So 2020 and into next year is going to be exceptionally busy for the operations team. Lots to do, but extremely confident that we can make significant progress to achieve these tasks and give the financial, contractual and the resident-facing outcomes which are required. That sums up the situation in terms of our strategy, Chair. Would you like to have any questions on that?
Thank you very much, Richard. That is really, really good. Members, have you any questions to Richard Bissett? Ray Lee.
Right.
Thank you, Chair. It was just a little one. We're all of the boroughs and districts in the middle and in the midst of doing recovery plans and everything else. One of the things, Richard, I think I'd just like to be explicit in there is about the learning, making sure we've learned from this exercise before the potential for a second spike. Because the experts are all talking about one in October. It might be negligible, it might be significant, nobody knows. But I think it's important, therefore, that we don't have a debriefing plan that runs into November, if you get my drift. So I think it's just being explicit, that's all.
Thank you, Ray. Any other questions? It's a very quiet meeting this afternoon. It must be because we're all at home. Okay, let's thank you very much for that update, Richard. And once again, I say congratulations and all the best. And thank you for your help and all the best in the future. Moving on, members, then to item number 7. And this is the AMI Annual Service and Performance Report. Nicola, I believe you're going to give us an overview.
Yes, so obviously the report was sent out in advance, so I'm not going to go through that in detail, but I will bring out some of the key points from it. So in terms of contract improvements, I think if I started off by saying it would be remiss of me not to mention the successful response to COVID-19 to start off with, where we've managed to maintain a full service throughout, which has been great. Significant improvements to the KPIs, whereby KPI 1, which is your miss bins, has been below target since January, and the other KPIs 2 through to 5, which all relate to assisted properties and repeat misses and things like that, have all reduced significantly since last year. We're looking at improvements of 60 to 70% on those KPI scores. Included in those is also the lab performance, which is like the measure of the street cleansing performance, which both Surrey Heath and Elmbridge over the last 2 cycles have hit target. Mole Valley has been a recovery cycle, and are getting, there was a year after that service being implemented in there where we suggested that we needed to make successful improvements, which have been done, and we are getting closer to that target there as well. Also, we have had, as Richard mentioned, considerable improvements to the joint relationship with JWS. We now have daily calls with them, and that has been, responsible for the successful deployment of the service during COVID, and has allowed us that even though we were going through COVID, to progress on a number of other key issues as well that were on that improvement plan that we committed to, which has been great. There has also been a number of other successful commercial decisions happening in the background, which have been lingering over many of us for a long period, and we're now seeing results on those and projects moving forward, which again is great. And lastly, in terms of improvements, in terms of our social responsibility. So I talked previously around Amy having a key interest in social value. Some of the activities that we've done over the past couple of months since we met previously, if I was to name a few. So Amy had a scheme to allow us to nominate care homes to receive face masks during COVID-19. And one of the nominations that we put in was a care home in Woking, which received those face masks. There is another scheme being rolled out at the moment around protective aprons, where we've put in nominations for care homes that are in Elmbridge and in Dorking, which is great. We've recently started working with the Elmbridge Youth Intervention Scheme to try and provide employment opportunities to people who have perhaps not had the best of starts in life. We're also working with the Dorking Refugee Support Group to look at opportunities for employment for individuals there, and we've had 2 successful candidates who are now full-time employed with us, which is great as well. We're also working quite closely with SAFA. I myself have been trained up as a mentor for SAFA to provide opportunities to mentor individuals that are leaving the military and looking to gain employment within Amy, or just looking for advice on how to gain employment full stop, and how to guide themselves through that resettlement process. We're also doing some virtual big brew up events with SAFA as well, so holding virtual sort of seminars with them for people that are leaving the military or who have incurred problems once they've left. There is a donation scheme through our through Ferrovial, which Dorking Trust have benefited from a donation, from quite a sizable donation of 17k, which is due to land at the Dorking Trust in the next couple of weeks. And then we're doing, we've done some various responses that we've been able to do in terms of COVID. So we did some leaflet drops over in Surrey Heath at the beginning to support some of the local councillors there. We helped out with some prescription deliveries in Woking. And more recently, we received a request to assist with some IT support, uploading some schooling documents online, which we're going to support with as well. So it's been quite busy in terms of social engagement activities, which is good. And we're obviously, if anyone has any other projects that come to light that they'd like us to get involved in, please don't hesitate to pass those in our general direction. We talked previously, 2 of the big ticket issues that have come up before. One is around IT and one is around garden waste. So just to kind of bring you up to speed loosely on those. In terms of IT, we've been going through a programme to make some improvements to our IT system. Those improvements, the ones that are going to benefit the frontline crews on the in-cabs and benefit the residents on the web forms, are due to go live in the next 2 weeks. They went through a testing cycle. There was a few amendments made during that testing cycle, both by ourselves and JWS. And we're just waiting for those final bits to be implemented, and then they will go into the live system. And hopefully we'll start to see improvements in the service received by our residents, both in terms of the ability to log things online and also in terms of improvements to the service, because the crews will get a better end result. We are also making improvements to our garden waste system, where we've made some improvements in terms of enabling us to provide more accurate figures in terms of subscribers, and for people to only be able to make payments on their garden waste account that are to the total amount due. There are some improvements still in the pipeline in terms of improvements to the invoice structure and things like that, which we are waiting an update when they will go live as well. Alongside that, we are also scoping a different IT system for the future, because the prop main system that we currently use, there are far more advanced opportunities on the market now that could provide our crews and the residents with a significantly improved service. So we are looking at those at the moment. The front runner in terms of service is Whitespace, and we're working closely with Neil and David on the JWS team in order to make sure we've got the specification completely correct, so that we can take that to Whitespace to ensure that they are going to be capable of delivering the full contract service that we asked for at the beginning. And that is it in terms of an update, unless anyone's got any questions for myself.
Nicola, thank you very much indeed. Members, can I ask whether you have any questions for Nicola? I'll let you go first, then I've actually got a few points I want to raise myself, but I'll let you go first, members.
David, Claire Malcolmson has got her hand up.
Thank you very much. Claire, over to you.
Thank you. It sounds amazing what you're doing, Nicola. Great that you're improving your IT systems, etc., etc. I spoke to you the other day and we were very positive with each other. All the initiatives that you're doing to help people in the area are fantastic. I think a lot of us have an umbrella that includes a lot of environment stuff. I wonder what kind of environment initiatives and incentives you could do. I believe most of us have declared a climate emergency, and I think you're going to be pressurized to get as green as possible now. And that will probably be your next challenge. I wonder if you could go away and think about what sort of things you could offer.
Yeah, so I can provide a brief update on that already. So I think it's in the report, but there is an environmental improvement plan that we have produced in the same structure as our traditional contract improvement plan that breaks down our plans over the next 4 quarters. The Q1 ending at the end of this month, so we're well on target with that, was focusing on things like green driver behaviour. So reducing speeding, vehicle idling, harsh accelerating, harsh braking, that sort of thing. And then also focusing on things like reduction in single-use plastic in the workplace, reduction in waste on the sites themselves, ensuring that our bins are disposed of through by being recycled, reducing, this being an example, the number of face-to-face meetings and using conference calls and Microsoft Teams, removing things like electric heaters that we had on sites, and moving to low energy LED lighting, and providing all of our employees with reusable water bottles going into the summer period, rather than single-use plastic that we've issued previously. It then goes on to focus on things like monitoring vehicle consumption and monitoring carbon emissions and things like that, energy wardens on sites, and schemes to encourage residents to fix broken items rather than disposing of them, and looking at sort of community involvement days to support things like additional litter picking and other local community groups, and looking at things like community involvement days to plant trees and support local wildlife and things like that, and looking opportunities to explore low emission or zero emission vehicles, and looking at electric charging points in the depots to encourage staff to move to electric or hybrid vehicles is some of the headlines. So we do have a plan in place that we're working to. Some of it has had to be centered around what data was available to me at present, so what I can drive at the moment and what I believe Amy are moving towards, because obviously I need the data in order to drive it. So the stuff that we've got in place already is stuff that we've managed to make tangible improvements on, and we would hope that further down the line we will be able to share that in our monthly and quarterly reports to show you the improvements that we're making, and then as more reports come online, we'll be able to drive a larger section of that environmental piece.
Thank you very much. Members, do we have any other questions? I can't see anyone waving. Can you, Catherine?
David, Councillor Davis would like to say something, and also Councillor Malcolmson has something to come back on.
Councillor Davis.
I'm actually happy for Councillor Malcolmson to come back if she wishes to, because that would seem more relevant to the points just made if that's the case. I'll mute for a second.
Thank you, that was really nice of you. It was just a quick question actually, Nicola. Obviously you're really doing stuff. Have you got, I know you're limited with the information that you've got. Are you going to go out and find a company to help you do that? And do you have a time schedule?
Yes, so we have a team within Amy already focusing on that, and I believe they're already well on the way to having that data provided. I believe the data is there, it's just not in our kind of Power BI format that we can access it readily and crunch it to get it into the format that we need in order to make improvements on site and with the teams. Some of it's there, the green vehicle behaviour, that sort of stuff is already there. It's more around the CO2 emission data and ensuring that we've got that available. But there is a team in Amy heavily focused on that at the moment. In terms of timescales, I'd have to come back to you on that. But they were well on the way when we met with them a couple of weeks ago, and we went through this plan with them before releasing it to make sure that it was in line with what Amy were doing and whether there was anything else we could add.
Thank you.
No problem.
Councillor Davis, did you have a point?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Briefly, I'd just like to say that the service in Woking was fantastic during the pandemic period, and I thank the crews, and I know that the members of the public in Woking were very appreciative of it all. And obviously, everything like that comes from the top. So, Nicola, from your team has obviously done a good job at motivating people to do a good job. And I'm very, very grateful for that. And I know part of that was probably due to the additional staff that were recruited, which floated across all four boroughs. And I'm aware that the service levels that tend to go down a bit when we end up relying on agency staff for whatever reason, usually sickness and stuff. Have you a plan for ensuring that we still hang on to some contingency staff that can be rotated across all four boroughs to give us a degree of continuity and try and keep that service as high as it was, please? Thank you.
Yeah, so what we have in place traditionally that we've been resourcing to, and it has taken a period of time, so we committed to putting in a 10% pool, where it works out as 13% total, so 3% to cover sick absence and 10% to cover annual leave, which is a pool of people. And up until we have been working pretty hard because our agency levels were very high. And we've worked pretty hard over the past year to ensure that everybody, all of our permanent roles are now filled by permanent members of staff. And the pool of people that we have covering annual leave and sick absence covers off, there is 2 or 3 people left across each site in order to resource us to 100% non-agency. So that 13% will be covered off by permanent members of staff, not agency personnel, so that they can become a reserve pool and become more familiar with the depots that they cover and how those different depots operate and the different processes in place there. So we will always have that 13%. As I said, currently there's probably 12, 13 across the contract left to convert from the agency on those, and we're well on our way with that. And obviously COVID-19, to be fair, has given us the opportunity to look at a broader section because more people have been available, which is great. We haven't had any struggles with getting agency people in when we need them. What we've also been doing is obviously daily, obviously we look at our resourcing, and if we need numbers over that in order to cover, then obviously we're getting them in. But we've changed the way we induct the agency. So what we did right at the beginning was a bulk induction day to make sure that we had agency available that could be utilised when we needed them. And they stayed in the background, and then we started to utilise those people as absence levels rose. And about halfway through COVID, we did another bulk induction day to get more people onto the books, not necessarily because we needed them at that moment, but it meant that they were then easily available for the following day rather than 3 or 4 days' time in order to get them in as absence levels rose. Obviously, absence levels in general now are fairly static, if I'm honest. Those that are shielding, we know exactly who they are, and we'll know at the point that we are allowed to bring those back. And those that are on are off because of symptoms or linked to people that have symptoms. The system's very good now in Surrey, which is fantastic, whereby that day we can get them tested. The following day they get their results, and then they're back to work the day after, which is great. And we can sustain that because those numbers are small. Yes, they are above the 13% absence we normally sit at. They're closer to the 20% mark, but day in, day out, they don't tend to change very much. And we don't seem to have, the good thing is we haven't suffered the way other businesses seem to. We haven't had people take off time unnecessarily, even at the beginning. Our numbers of people that went off in that first 2 or 3 weeks compared to other public service kind of organisations was quite low. And I personally think that's down to the kind of engagement plan that we put in place with these individuals. So throughout COVID, week in, week out, myself and the senior management team have been out visiting those crews, and every single crew on the ground every single week through COVID has received a visit from a member of the senior management team. I produced an update briefing each week to bring them up to date on what processes we had in place, what changes there were, what changes we'd agreed with JWS and yourselves, changes to PPE, and just kind of making them understand, in week 2, why we weren't issuing masks and what was the reasoning behind that, so that there wasn't sort of general rumour mill circulating that then causes concerns. And to be fair, most of the guys that are off shielding would prefer not to be. We're having to force them to stay at home because by now they want to get back to work and want to see their friends and get back involved. But we're having to say to them no. So I think the engagement strategies really worked, and I think that's something we all take away from it is changing the way we do our engagement, and changing the way we kind of engage with our people and how we as a senior management team get out there a bit more than we have done previously. And I think we've modelled that through. We've carried on that modelling through the round changes we've done in Mole Valley, and that engagement strategies there has been successful, and those round changes have been really successful, which is good. and has allowed us to use that learning point and take it forward as we move through to the other round changes and any other change kind of programs that we go through at account level. So in terms of the agency, I think we've got the 13% there. Yes, at the moment we're above that, but I think what we've got in place is sustainable, and in general we can get people pretty quickly because our absence levels have been higher, and those people in general are still available to come back when we need them.
Thank you, Nicola.
No problems.
Councillor Davis, do you have any supplementary questions you'd like to ask? Or? I take that as a no. I haven't got anybody hand waving on my screen. Catherine, have you on yours?
I can't see any.
Are there any other questions that anyone would like to put to Nicola? Okay, just before we do then agree to note the item, hopefully, I'd just also like to say, Nicola, from my perspective, congratulations. It was great to see on the stats, the reduction in the missed bins. I think that's, I have to say, given the crisis we've just gone through, that's fantastic. And I agree with what Councillor Davis referred to earlier, that it starts at the top down. And so well done to all your team and all the additional visits that you've obviously got out there and done. I was also impressed with your innovative idea about the tying up with the care homes and the face mask and the apron schemes. I thought that was absolutely superb. So, you know, and speaking, I won't dwell on it, I promise, but speaking as somebody that did actually spend a shift out there pushing and pulling bins, I know exactly, you know, the work that these guys are doing. I'd also like to point out that I was really impressed also how many of the teams actually stayed together. There wasn't a great diversity of new teams. It was the same teams, and you maintain those staff levels. So many thanks and congratulations. That's really good. So if members, you're happy, the item is to note. Should we have a show of hands if we're happy to note the item? Thank you. So the item is noted. So that's item 7. Thank you. Moving on to item 8 on the agenda, the end of year financial update and budget setting. I believe Marco is going to give us an update on that. Is that correct?
Yeah, I didn't think that Marco would give that update, but looking at who's on the call, I think it's going to have to be me. So the paper shows members what the budget outturn position looks like. It shows that we are just over £500,000 underspent on the core invoice as a result of some indexation changes that happened after the estimates were made. It talks about the variable invoice and the fact that we are close to resolving the issues to get those paid historically, so that's good news. And it also sets out a £47,000 underspend for our JWS costs, taking account of £107,000 carry forward from 1920 to 2021. So I probably wouldn't say any more than that, Chair, but I will do my best to answer any questions that members might have.
Thank you very much. Thank you for stepping into the breach, Matt. I can't see anybody, any hands raised. Can you, Catherine? Has anyone got any questions, members?
Oh, Councillor Marshall.
Mary.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to ask about recycling because I see that there's lots of places around the world refusing rubbish, rightly so, and how we're going to get over the issue of the quality of the plastic going down, but the plastic not reducing in the environment. So how do we manage that scenario?
I did not expect you to ask that question, Councillor, after me presenting that budget. How are we going to do that? Interestingly, at the moment, I mean, John might want to say something on this too, but his team monitor materials prices across from a couple of different sources and how those are looking. At the moment, prices are on a slightly reduced trajectory, but some of our core materials at the moment, prices are quite buoyant because there is a shortage of material in the system. Now, there's a lag on those prices. So now all the services are back up and running across the country. Then suddenly that shortage isn't there anymore. And so the volatility of prices, I think, over the next 6, 12, 18 months, from our perspective, I think is hugely unknown. We think it's hugely important that we look for ways in which we can manage the material as close as possible to source. The more management of the material we can do within the county, within the region, and control some of that sorting will enable us to get more consistency in the material, higher quality material, and then higher quality material always gets a better price on the market. It's the lower quality material that you're struggling to shift. I think on the plastic side of things, we've talked before about the national waste strategy and the fact that that's coming and what that might mean for us as a group of local authorities and what that might mean for the environment. Government have slowed down, understandably, they've pushed back some of the milestones in getting that national waste strategy over the line, but they have started consulting again on a draft. I've been invited to a meeting next week that has been pushed back from April, but it looks like the wheels are turning again at DEFRA. And I think we've talked before about the fact that when the producers of material are required to pay for its ultimate disposal, that's a sea change. All the time that you can put material onto the market and then it becomes someone else's problem, then you're less invested in how recyclable that material is. If you need to pay for its ultimate disposal, and maybe you have to pay £130 a tonne if it's burnt, or £10 a tonne, or £20 a tonne, or £30 a tonne if it's recyclable, it then suddenly becomes an economic no-brainer to get rid of your black plastic. And I'm sure we've all seen that black plastic is tearing out of shelves at the moment, where producers of material are preparing early for those changes. So I feel like we're in a bit of a wait and see transitional period where we've got to keep an eye on what our materials prices are. We've got to keep engaging nationally in where that agenda is going. We're likely to have to look at our collection services to make sure that we're providing material of the right quality. I suspect we'll be talking about that in the next year as to how we collect the materials. We need to stay on top of looking to see if we can get a facility that we have our own responsibility for, and that is mentioned in the County Council's commissioning strategy paper that is going to their cabinet next week. And then let's make sure that we are ahead of the game, I think, when the national waste strategy comes out and we're ready to take those opportunities.
Thank you very much, Matt, for stepping in with the answer to Mary's. John, is there anything you'd like to back up with Mary's question?
Unmute, come on. Sorry, I'm having trouble with my mute. Only to add to that, so one of the things that we're looking into, there are a couple of things to mention that we're looking into with contamination. One is about what's actually happening with them at the MRF, about how they take their samples and what material comes out of that in terms of are we sampling enough material to give us the confidence in the statistics that we're reporting for our contamination level. So we're looking into that. The other thing I'm really keen that we try and look into a bit more is about what materials are being rejected as contaminants. So that situation isn't stable. The MRF changes the material that they accept and the material that they reject every quarter or on an ongoing basis. And in the quarterly statistics we receive, we see that that's actually changed in terms of what materials are being rejected. So we're trying to get better data about that so we can say a bit more about what's happening and how that impacts on where our material is being sent and what's happening with the international market. So to tie up that start to finish process, as Matt's talking about, in terms of what the markets look like, what's happening internationally, what's happening within the UK. So the more information we can get out of that, out of the MRFs about what's actually acceptable, then the more helpful that's going to be for us. We've only just started looking at that, to be honest, but we're trying to, so hopefully within not too long a period, we'll have much better information about that and be able to say a bit more about how that's impacting our figures.
Thank you, John. Just before I ask Mary whether she's got a supplementary, I do love acronyms, having worked in the NHS for years. When we say MRF, for anyone that is joining us that is not acronym sound, a MRF is a materials recycling facility. Mary, would you have any supplementary questions you'd like to ask, please?
No, just to say, I just want to say the reason for the question was obviously there's a budget to all this, and is there any budget set to offset the issues that we're facing with the reduction in the quality of recycling, and how we're getting over this problem? Because so many people, residents are saying, oh, what's the point of recycling? It is important. We have to keep on track and make sure we put the right thing in the right bin, and teaching people which plastic is a yes and which is a no for the bin for recycling, so we don't have we can reduce contamination and reduce our costs, and not be burning things that could be recycled.
Thank you, Mary.
David, you're on mute.
It's, do you know, it's the storm that's going on out here. I tell you, it's hammering it down out here. We've got thunder and lightning. Okay, thank you everyone for their input there. That's item 8. Members, we have this item just to note. Are we happy by a show of hands to note item 8? Thank you, members. Moving now to item number 9, the performance reporting. John, I think it's back to yourself again, please.
Oh, where is it? Oh, goodness. Okay. I don't know if you can hear me. Yes. Okay. I'm having trouble with my mute as well. Okay. Sorry about that. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so the performance report that you've got here is basically about recycling performance only. And what we're looking at is a report for Q3, up to Q3 2019-20, which is up to the period for the 12 months to December 2019. So there's quite a lag in this at the moment. I had been hoping that we would have data up to Q4, which would take us up to the end of March, but unfortunately we've been unable to get that this quarter. However, just to say, I am hopeful and expecting, in fact, that by the time of the next meeting in September, we will have data up to Q1 of 2020-21. So we will skip Q4, we will go straight to Q1. So just to let you know that we should be able to catch that up in the next meeting. What this report, so there is a written report, which is a couple of pages, and then 4 performance dashboards, 1 for each authority, which hopefully everyone has seen before and is familiar with the format of those. I won't go through the details line by line, but I just will say something about the context of Surrey-wide performance. So the general picture across Surrey is that dry mix recycling tonnages have been going down. This is in particular tonnages that are recyclable. So not only have tonnages that we collect been going down roughly by 1.5% across Surrey, the proportion of those that's recyclable has actually fallen as well, due to the reasons we were just talking about in terms of markets and international markets. So that's something that, just to bear that in mind for context. For the other materials, so garden waste tonnages are going up across the county. They've gone up by about 3.5%. I often say this to officers, but garden waste tonnages are very seasonal. There are a lot of factors that impact on those, particularly the weather. At the moment, for a lot of councils in Surrey, we are seeing big increases in numbers of subscribers, which is good news. So more people are subscribing to those garden waste collection services. But there are a lot of factors about in garden waste that we do not control. So just bear that in mind when you're looking at year-on-year changes, please. And food waste continues to be a good news story across Surrey, which is the recycling tonnages have gone up by around 2% year-on-year. So that's good news. And residual waste is staying very steady. So not going down, but it's not going up. So that's good news. In terms of the boroughs, in particular, joint contract authorities, so just a few headlines really to mention. So for, in general, garden waste has gone up quite significantly in a number of councils, generally to do with the things like garden waste subscriptions going up. So we're very much aware of the fact that that's happened this year. So everyone except Woking has seen a reasonably large increase in their garden waste tonnages. For dry mix recycling, in terms of the comparison with the Surrey average, 2 of the councils have seen a sort of steady state with dry mix recycling, but Elmbridge and Woking have both seen decreases that are over and above what we'd expect to see across the Surrey. So that they've done worse, in fact, than Surrey generally. Food waste, similarly, not quite at the same levels that we're seeing across the county as a whole, with the exception of Surrey Heath. But some good news for residual waste, which is that residual waste tonnages are either staying steady or going down. They're not going up in any of the joint contract authorities. So there's some good news on residual waste. And then also put in this report some information about what reported publicly. So that is also a further quarter in arrears. It only goes up to Q2, which is up to the end of September 2019. And that's what's reported in Waste Data Flow, which is the DEFRA published figures. So they're in there for information, but I won't provide any comments on those. But I suppose really that's all I wanted to say. Does anyone have any questions about any of those reports? Any of those dashboards or the report generally?
Members, any questions?
Councillor Malcolmson.
I just wanted to ask if you know why the food has gone down. Is it because people are actually recycling their own and having using them in the garden, or do we know if people are saving food? Have they been listening to not throwing so much away? Do we know?
So we don't know. One of the things we're doing is trying to look at more detail. So the answer is no, we don't. What we're trying to do is look at more detailed round level data. So we're trying to break these tonnages down into rounds so we can see if there are different behaviours in different parts of, and this is for all the joint contract councils, to see if there are different behaviours in different parts of each council area. And suspicion is that some rounds are performing worse and better than others. So it may be the case that we can tell a bit more about, and this is something we're quite far advanced in this work now. So hopefully quite soon we'll be able to sort of say a bit more about that and be able to break it down and see whether there are certain behaviours that are happening. It might be to do with set out rates. It might be to do with the way that the crew's managing the material. There are a number of possible reasons for explanations for this. And certainly we'll be looking into all of those different options. So, but I don't think there's a behavioural reason for it that's obvious. Not hearing about that nationally, and certainly across Surrey as a whole, we're not sort of experiencing any general trends in food waste recycling. The food waste story in Surrey over the last few years has generally been very good. We're pretty confident that our campaigns have been landing well with residents and that more people are using their food waste caddies. So it's an interesting question, and I don't know the answer to it, but we would be looking into that one. Because some of the joint contract authorities do stand out a bit compared with other Surrey councils.
Thank you very much. Members, are there any other questions anyone would like to ask?
Councillor Hawkins, please.
Thank you. I would be interested in the next lot of figures, actually, although you said you haven't got them, as to what effect it will have had in the current situation. For instance, I'm thinking on food waste that perhaps that will be a continual trend to go down, because people are now thinking, you know, I've got to, rather than just saying, oh, I'll throw it away and I'll buy a new melon or something or other, you know, whereas before they perhaps throw it away, think, well, maybe it's okay and I'll keep it. And so they are being a little more circumspect of what they actually throw away. But could you tell me what, under textiles, what WEEE means? Is that electrical or?
It's a we.
Well, I got that bit, but I didn't know what we.
It's the. Oh, you can answer.
Waste electrical. Yeah, waste electrical.
Waste electrical.
Waste electrical. Oh.
Waste electrical equipment.
I
always forget what the second is.
I was going to say, I thought electric. I couldn't quite get electrical.
Small electrics. Yeah, it's electrical equipment basically. Yeah.
Okay. Do you know when the next lot of figures will be out?
For all of the tonnages.
Yes.
So
well, or mainly for I'm interested in the recycling, really. You know, as to, because it's up to December, sort of when the next lot will be out.
So we're working furiously hard to get the Q3 out, which is up to the published data, but then Q4 will be out very shortly after that. So we're playing catch up a bit. Is the short answer is we're playing catch up with some of these tonnages to get them into our data system and then to get those reports published as quickly as we can. So we're hoping that the lag is going to be concertinaed, if you like. So as we go forward to the next few months, we'll catch up quickly, and then by September we'll essentially have we'll be 3 months caught up, if that makes sense. Okay. So the figures will be out reasonably soon, I think. In terms of the COVID response, recent performance, we do include the food waste tonnages in the weekly report that goes out to members. So I don't know if you've seen.
Yes, I hadn't thought to look before I was on this meeting.
Okay, that's all right. So food waste has been significantly higher. So we're looking at about 12-13%. Tonnages have consistently been about 12-13%. above what we would normally be expected to see.
All right.
Waste. People are, there is more food waste, presumably because people who would be in work are at home and now getting through more food waste. But we've also sold a lot more composters, so we think people are doing more composting. So so people's behaviour has changed quite significantly. What we're seeing, that's very steady. It isn't showing any signs at the moment of going back to pre-COVID levels, except for garden waste, which is of course very heavily weather dependent. So everything else is staying at quite a high level compared with what we'd be expecting to see.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, John. Members, anybody, has anyone got any further questions? Thank you, John, for that. I just briefly, I would say that I do find it quite fascinating that the period of during the COVID pandemic, how much with people staying at home, how much clearing out they've been doing, etc., because I think that has had an impact. So those figures will be interesting to see sort of year-on-year basis going forward in the long term. We had our morning tea session with the waste disposal team this morning. When they rock up, we always give them a cup of tea and biscuits, and it's interesting to see what they actually said or were saying about the volume of increase that of waste that has happened during this period. So when the stats all come through, they will be, I'm sure, interesting reading. But thank you very much indeed for that. So that's item 9 that we have before us. Members, are we happy to note the performance reporting on item 9? If we can have a show of hands, please, I'll be most grateful. Thank you, members. That's item 9 concluded. Item 10, COVID-19 update. Now, you must excuse me, I quickly was scribbling some notes before the meeting took place, and I've got, is it David that's going to give us an update on this?
Yes, thank you. So in terms of the COVID-19 update, if I just sort of take you probably through a little bit of just a chronological journey, really. So as we went into the lockdown period, we commenced sort of a daily update call with Amy. And as Nicola referenced earlier, that has proven to be really, really successful. We've maintained that, and some of the outputs of that has fed into the weekly email that you've also seen. It's fair to say, I think we have maintained all the services during the COVID period, in particularly garden waste, where a lot of authorities, even in Surrey and outside of Surrey, struggled to do that. That was maintained. The only slight glitch we had is we had a slight period where we suspended the curbside and textiles, and that was more around the end market's acceptability rather than around actual resources and the crew's ability to collect, etc., etc. So that was that glitch. Everybody will be aware that the curbside collection of and textiles has resumed. And just for the missing E is electronic, by the way, in it's so just for point of note. Also during this period we suspended the KPI deduction, so that was only the deduction that was suspended. We've carried on monitoring, so that monitoring process has continued, but the KPI deduction was suspended for the COVID period, and is still currently suspended. We touched on the agency support in Nicola's report, so I won't really go through that. And again, for the output of all of this for yourselves was the weekly update in terms of maintaining that communication. There's a number of bits I was going to reference. I think Nicola's already covered off, but I think I'm right in saying is in this whole period we've only had 3 confirmed cases, I believe, across the workforce. We've had a number of people who have self-isolated for 14 days because of either parental or family contact, but in terms of somebody who was tested positive, I believe it's only 3. Is that right, Nicola? Yeah, which is a phenomenal result, and that really sort of is a summary of what's been going on day to day. I think it would be remiss of me not to sort of add the support and thanks to Nicola and her team and all of the crews really, who have delivered a fantastic level of service across this period, and that's been referenced earlier in the meeting as well, and I would just like to add to that. But also I just would like to take this opportunity to thank you as authorities and members really for your support during this period. It's been absolutely fantastic. And that really sort of concludes the COVID update. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much indeed, David. Members, do we have any questions? I'm rapidly moving through my screen here. I can't see anybody with their hand up.
No, I can't see anyone with a hand up either. So I think you're okay, David.
Okay, David, thank you very much indeed for that update. Just one question, if I may. Is the plan, you know, we say thanks to the teams for what they've done and their resource to actually, you know, maintain the fantastic service across the areas. Is there any form of letter going out to all the teams to say, you know, a special thank you? Because, you know, it hasn't gone unnoticed. And I'm just curious to what you know, level of thanks we can actually put in writing.
It's a fair point, actually, and it's certainly something we can pick up. I mean, we certainly feedback directly to Nicola and the teams any of your comments that come back through, and I'm very, very appreciative of any replies we get to the weekly update anyway, and they are fed back. Nicola has had a number of sort of direct, I think, probably numbering now several hundred, if not into the 1,000 of various pictures and things that have been left by the crews. But I think it would be quite happy to take an action from this in terms of we write to the crews or write to the AME team and something that can be shared. I know Matt did something a couple of months ago, but you know, time has marched on. Quite happy to pick that up.
Okay, let's go forward on that then. I would like therefore to put forward to the members here and now that we agree that we're happy for you to go ahead and issue some form of letter to the teams of grateful thanks for actually rocking up and continuing the fantastic service during these extraordinary times. I mean, is there anybody that would like to make a comment? Are you for or against that idea? Mary.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's a good idea. The teams have worked really hard. They've gone the extra mile. But I also like to thank officers that have sent updates to us that have also been very helpful and kept us informed about what is going on. It's been invaluable because people are concerned, and I reiterate, where would we be if it had all fallen apart and no waste had been collected in the last 12 weeks? I think attitudes have changed, and long may they last, that people actually thank the bin men rather than being aggressive to them. I think it's a great thing in that respect, and they do deserve a thank you from us. Thank you.
Thank you. Has anybody got any other comments they'd like to make? Okay. Can you see anyone, Catherine?
Yes, Councillor Davis and then Councillor Hawkins.
Councillor Davis, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I mean, I support this. You know, I know that the bin crews, they did step up to the plate and things did improve, which is why, you know, my question earlier was how do we maintain that level? Because that does concern me. I did have a letter published in our local paper thanking the bin crews. But I do think that off of this committee, it wouldn't do any harm whatsoever for us to publicly acknowledge the good job that was done. So I'm very much in supportive of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you. Yes, I totally support. We should send them a letter acknowledging their excellent work. I think, you know, if you looked out the window and that the bin men arrived as normal, in fact, probably more on time, everything was collected. We didn't have any problems whatsoever. I had no complaints from residents, not that I recollect. I think they've done an excellent job. And I also would like to thank officers for keeping us updated on what actually has been happening. I think everyone's done a terrific job, and I'm not sure where we would have been without all of them, to be honest. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. All right, what I propose therefore we will do is I will speak with the leader and chief executive, and we will get letters out to the officers. But I also would like just to say, see if we can show a show of hands to actually also have a separate letter going out from the management of the team so that they are represented as well. So can I have a show of hands to agree that, please, going forward? Thank you. Thank you very much. So thank you very much indeed, David, for that update on item 10. That concludes today's meetings, unless there's anything I've missed out.
David, Matt would like to have a word.
Please go ahead, sir.
Chairman, thank you. Just in terms of the date of the next meeting, was going to propose to the committee that we stick with Zoom meetings for the next 2 meetings, so that we don't assume that, or we don't plan to go back into committee rooms when it's just not going to happen. So we continue to have Zoom meetings for our next 2 meetings, and also potentially we push them back a week, given that it's quite a heavy day because of the SEP meetings we're having on the same day. So if members are happy with that, then Catherine and I will make those arrangements.
Members, can I have a show of hands that you're happy to do that, please?
Brilliant, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think that concludes the meeting today. Thank you very much, Catherine.
David, Claire Malcolmson's waving at you.
Oh, is she? Oh, sorry. Claire, please.
I'm sorry, I'm always wanting to talk about things.
No, go ahead.
I don't know if it would be a good idea to start. It's the only way we can look into digital printing and using our waste plastic that way. I haven't a clue how it happens. I did mention it when I went to see Grundon, and they said they don't have the right facilities obviously yet, but I do think it's a forward way of using our recycling of plastic. I don't know. Just want to put that in the mix.
Thank you for that. Was this the Grundon site up near the airport?
In Leatherhead.
Oh, Leatherhead. Okay, right. Okay, thank you. Well, we can note that. Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to say anything? Raise any points? Well, thank you very much indeed for coming along to the meeting. And I look forward to meeting everyone again on the 23rd. So